Hi, I'm Tony Porter, and in this video, I'm going to provide a short overview of some of my own research interests. So, I've been specializing in the field of global political economy since I got my PhD in 1992. And my PhD dissertation was on the regulation of global financial markets. I chose two institutions that at the time were hardly known at all, were relatively new. One was the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision, which was responsible for setting standards for global bank regulation, headquartered in Basel at the Bank for International Settlements. And the second was the International Organization of Securities Commissions, which was in Montreal at the time and was the primary standard setter for global securities regulation, securities being stocks and bonds. And my interest was really, can there be global institutions that can be constructed to manage and regulate the rapid expansion of global finance that had already in the 1970s and 1980s begun to really destabilize the global economy, for instance, with the developing country debt crisis, and for many people, seem to be severely constraining the options for governments, including their capacities to provide social welfare policies, since the bond markets seem to require governments to implement austerity policies in order to satisfy the interests of investors. So those two institutions were not well known, and part of that reason was because they were informal organizations mostly, although the second one, the International Organization of Securities Commissions, was a bit more formally organized. But they're basically collaborations between regulators, officials, rather than an organization like the International Monetary Fund, which is big and bureaucratic and established by government through treaty. Now, today, an increasing number of areas of global governance in general and global political economy in particular are governed by these types of informal arrangements. So as I've continued on through my research through the years, I've looked at a wide variety of these types of institutions and how they can set standards and help regulate the global economy, especially global business, but also their shortcomings, since, as many people have frequently pointed out, the informal and often private character of these types of rules um, make them harder to enforce as compared to formal law, where the state is more used to imposing some kind of sanction either on individuals through putting them in jail or for governments by organizing some globally coordinated sanction campaign or something like that. So I've also been really interested in the related topic of private authority and private rulemaking. In the 1990s, I and a couple of other colleagues began to notice that there were an increasing number of important rulemaking bodies that were either business associations or some mix of business and government. An example today is the International Accounting Standards Board, which sets the global accounting standards and until the 2008 crisis was entirely private. And similarly, the Global GAP, which is a food safety and sustainability standard setter, is one of the most important rulemaking bodies in the area of global food safety and sustainability. So I've looked at all sorts of those types of private rules and their strengths and weaknesses. And then more recently, I've been interested in technical rules, which can include scientific standards, but also increasingly computer code or algorithms, and ever-growing areas of the global political economy and global governance are shaped in some way by machine systems. An older example is the Clearinghouse Interbank Payment System, which is in New York and through which about 95% of US dollar transactions worldwide are channeled. And there's computer coding there that regulates the exposures and access of the different banks to the exchange that the software enables. But a more recent example is something like Google Search, which is surprisingly heavily involved in the enforcement of intellectual property rights. If any sort of content owner, which is like a movie studio or some maker of computer software, feels that their software or their video content or other content is being pirated, then they can contact Google and ask Google to take it out of their search. And that search can be extremely effective since it's up to 90% or more of the global market, depending on what device you're using. So it, in many ways, is the window through which we either see or don't see what's out there on the global internet, which is our public space and our source of access to all sorts of things. So Google takes down millions of sites that are contested every month and is in that way heavily involved in the enforcement of intellectual property rules. Other examples are the way that Facebook algorithms are being tweaked to try to regulate fake news, and there are many other types of technical rules like that that are becoming increasingly important. So overall, I've been really interested in all these types of rulemaking. One of my current projects is on numbers in transnational governance, for which I received a research grant from the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada. And it looks at all the different ways that numbers are increasingly displacing words in global governance. That includes rankings, country rankings, for instance, such as the World Governance Indicators, which the World Bank produces and ranks all different countries and shapes the flow of investment and aid and other types of things, and so are really quite influential and powerful. And many, many other rankings such as that, or risk models, which are very important and increasingly in different types of regulation, or algorithms of the type I've mentioned, or just big data in general and the display of that in various ways. And barcodes are FID chips and all the technology associated with the Internet of Things. So all these things are extremely powerful ways that numbers can integrate global governance, global political economy, and the world as a whole. But there are big political questions about the power relations involved, including the power of the companies like Google or Amazon or Facebook, and the sort of lack of transparency that is often attached with the creation of algorithms. Nobody really knows for sure how Google's search algorithm works. And that's true of a lot of the use of numbers in global governance and the global political economy. For instance, the rankings, the World Governance Indicators, even though the World Bank has tried to make those as transparent as possible, the rankings are to a significant degree based on business perceptions of a country's level of corruption and transparency and ease of doing business. And this introduces a bias towards business into the ranking that won't be evident to somebody who just scans across and says, oh, this country moved up a rank or this country moved down. So all those types of governance issues are really important and interesting to me. and the role of all this in democracy and the difficulties that democracy is facing with fake news um, and micro-targeting and the sort of transformation of the public sphere and increasing privatization of it are ones that are also part of this project, including a workshop that I'm doing both in September and then a different workshop later in the winter that I'm co-organizing with Natina Tan from our department, and the first one's also involving Sarah Bannerman from communications. So those are some of my current and past research interests, and I produce lots of different articles and other publications that um, publish these findings and make them available. And I look forward to discussing them if you're interested in them. Thank you.